Welcome to the Build Your Private Practice podcast, a space for Canadian therapists who want to support others, make an impact, and build a sustainable practice that works for them too. I'm your host, Liane Wood, a registered psychotherapist, group practice owner, and business mentor, and I'm here to help you build a private practice that allows you to keep doing the work you love without burning out. Because the people who need your help the most are counting on you, and you deserve a practice that supports you while you support them. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to the Build Your Private Practice podcast. I'm so glad you're tuning in today. If money has ever felt confusing, overwhelming, or downright stressful in your private practice, you are not alone. And this episode is going to meet you right where you are. Today, I am joined by someone who has made it her mission to help therapists like you build a better relationship with money. Linzy Bonham is the founder of Money Skills for Therapists and the host of Money Nuts and Bolts podcast. She's helped so many mental health professionals across North America step into financial clarity, confidence, and calm. And in today's conversation, we're going to explore the deeper emotional and mindset challenges that therapists face with money, as well as practical steps to start creating financial systems that actually support your life and practice. So, whether you're just starting out or have been in practice for years, this episode will leave you feeling more empowered and less alone when it comes to your finances. Welcome, Linzy. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, Liane. I'm so happy to be here.
I'd love it if you would tell our community a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to focus on money and therapists.
So I am a social worker by training, and I stepped into private practice in 2013.
Mhm,
Very like eager and so excited to get to work on my own terms. I remember thinking a lot about how I was going to get to set my own culture because coming out of an agency workplace where there was a lot of kind of like tension and toxicity and history, like there was all this heaviness. I was like, oh, I get to set up my practice to be what I get to set the vibe. The room is
mm,
what I want it to be. Like, so stepped into private practice, was so excited, and then started to look through the business books to be like, okay, and then what do I do with the money part of it? And found almost nothing. Like literally
mm,
like a paragraph here, like a page there. Like I was looking for my how do you set up the financial part of private practice? How do you know if you're saving enough for
mhm,
taxes? Like how do you set up a good filing system? How do you keep track of money? And it just was a part of private practice that was not being talked about.
mhm.
So I am the daughter of an accountant. I got a good dose of
Okay.
that type of brain. So I have this
Mhm,
kind of like mix of this interest in numbers and spreadsheets and clarity and all that like beautiful black and whiteness that money can give you, that numbers can
mhm,
give.
mhm,
And so I have that part of me. So I leaned into really figuring out systems and skills and building that all out. And then I started talking with my colleagues about it, some of them good friends, like I'm thinking about my work wife from the agency that I worked with, and
mhm.
realized that some of them were so scared of the financial part of private practice, like that they didn't even want to start a practice at all.
Oh,
They were
wow.
like, I'd rather just stay in this agency where I'm unhappy than have to
Mm,
deal with like taxes. Like I don't want to do that. And I just saw this huge gap of like all these really talented therapists who could do such amazing work and could also like experience these beautiful freedoms that I was experiencing, but wouldn't
mhm.
take that step because of the money being so scary. So, yeah, I
Wow.
built Money Skills for Therapists, the course in 2018. I've been teaching
Mhm,
it ever since, minus
mhm,
a 1 year mat leave when I had my son in 2019.
mhm.
And I have never looked back. Like, I love helping therapists with finances.
Wow. Well, that's an amazing story. I had no idea. I've known you for a little bit now, but
Yeah.
I didn't know that as your background. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I think you've hit on, right off the bat, you've hit on some pieces that are really important. So I'd love to, start with the really big question of why is money
Mhm.
so hard for so many therapists?
Yeah. I think there's a dual component to this. So I think about money and finances as two separate things that are connected, but also have their own flavor, let's say. So on the money side of things, I think a lot of therapists are conflicted about money, period. Right? Like we have this mixed feeling about receiving money for the work that we do. Generally speaking, therapists are caregiving types of people who've been taking care of the people around us for
Mhm.
sometimes our entire lives. Like the first time that I had somebody comment that I was their therapist was my best friend when I was 12 years old, right? Like that was long before I was ever trained or qualified to be giving therapy. And yet here I was, like, talking to her about her problems with her, grade seven boyfriend.
Mhm.
So I think that for so many of us, that kind of caring for others is so intrinsic to our personalities and who we are that already taking money for it can feel conflicted, and
Mhm.
we are so in tune with like the injustices of the world and the suffering of the world, and depending on the type of work we've done, we might work with folks or have worked with folks who don't have money, right? And who
Mhm. Yeah.
really struggle financially or are marginalized in all sorts of ways. And so I think that many therapists are just conflicted about money, period,
Mhm.
right? We're in our schooling too. We are not taught anything about money.
Mhm.
I've heard
Mhm.
a few different sayings lately about how money is talked about in grad schools, especially American grad schools, where there, is more of this professional training with this expectation that you probably are going into private practice. And yet, when people try to talk about money, there's this phrase that I heard recently: "It's not about the income; it's about the outcome." So it's
Yes.
like we're also like actively discouraged from even trying to think and learn about money when we want to. So on
Mhm.
one hand, you have this kind of psychic emotional baggage around money, right? That
Mhm.
we all have for all these different reasons. And then we also have finances, which is this whole other beast, which is about actual financial management, like understanding how numbers work,
Mhm.
understanding how to set aside the right amounts of money, understand how to pay yourself regularly, like the management of
Yeah.
money and the financial literacy is a whole other skill set. And most of
Mhm.
us, just by virtue of the brains that we have, don't love humans and relationships and helping people and also love math. There are some of us out there, I'm one of them, right? But
Mhm.
like generally speaking, when we're really gifted in that one side,
Mhm.
you probably weren't all getting like A pluses in English and also getting A pluses in math, right? Generally speaking, we have a brain that goes one way or the other. So
Yeah.
therapists also just don't tend to be folks who really love or are naturally skilled at spreadsheets and
Right.
math and that kind of
Mhm.
order making. So you
Mhm.
kind of get these two things that come together, all of this like emotional baggage around money, the lack of
Mhm.
skills and training, and probably emotional baggage around finances, and like smash those together. And
Mhm.
that is why money is really hard for us.
That's such a great explanation. As you're sitting there and talking about that, I'm thinking about a coaster that I have in my therapy practice.
Yeah.
It says, I don't know how many problems I have because math is one of them.
That's amazing. That's so good.
Yeah, yeah. And it's true. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think what you're saying is like dead bang on, right? It's just how we're wired, and
Yeah.
yeah, not everybody is wired to want to look at spreadsheets and figure
No,
out numbers,
no.
and I think that, speaking also what you said about school, like I'm thinking back to my time in school, and I don't remember what class it was in, but I had one of our teachers say, if you were getting into this to make money, you're in the wrong profession. And I'm like, what?
I cannot count the amount of times that I've heard that said, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't go into this field to make money.
Yeah,
And
and it's almost like if you are in private practice and want to make
yeah,
money, that you're not a good
yes,
therapist, right? That
yes,
there's something wrong with you that you would
totally.
want to
Yeah,
earn a living
I know. Pay your
after paying
mortgage.
for grad
Have
school.
I know, I know. And like the student loan debt that I have seen, working with therapists,
Oh,
like some of it is staggering.
yeah.
Like we're
Hmm.
talking about massive amounts of debt that we
Yeah.
get to become professionals,
Yeah.
right? And doctors are not like wringing their hands about making good money and
Right.
paying down their
Mhm.
medical debt, and yet we are, right? And I think
Yes.
being in a feminized profession is certainly a large part of that.
Hmm. 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 Yeah. 100%. So, for a therapist who is maybe feeling ashamed or confused about their finances, what do you think is the first mindset shift or practical step that you would recommend?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about mindset first, and then I'll talk about practical because there's kind of like two doors in.
Yeah.
The mindset piece, though, is generally foundational, right? And this is what I've discovered working with therapists over the last 6 years around money is when we have all of these negative stories and all these emotions and, hyper or hypo arousal that comes up when we
Mhm.
think about it, it's really
Mhm.
hard to learn. It's really hard to do anything. So, from that mindset side, that emotional side, a great place to start is just start to be curious about your relationship with money. Like, how do you
Mhm.
feel about money? What words come to mind when you think about money? In my course Money Skills for Therapists, we have some, open-ended journal prompts,
Mhm.
to use when folks are exploring these kinds of stories. But like if I say money is dot dot dot, what words come up for you? Right? And spending time with your money story, because sometimes too our money stories are not logical.
Mhm.
And well, most of the time they're not logical, but sometimes we'll dismiss them because
Right.
we know they're not logical. We're like, oh, well, I know that's not true. But
Mhm.
when you really just sit with what comes up, there's a part of you that does believe these things are true, right? Like there's a part of you
Right.
that might believe that money is only for greedy people. And if you have money, it shows that you don't care about other people, right? Or you're part of the problem, right? And so taking time to just be curious and be with your stories and just let them flow and
Mhm.
understand what are you holding
Mhm.
is huge, right?
Mhm.
And same with that finances side too. When I say like math is da 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 da, or
Mhm.
managing money is, what comes up? Is it
Mhm.
hard? Is it easy? Is it interesting? Is it impossible? Is it something that you'd rather hide under your bed than even
Mhm.
think about? These are really helpful explorations to do because it gives you your starting place. What are you starting with? What are you holding? Right? Like
Right.
what's in your backpack? What's in your baggage? And the more that we can start to notice what we're carrying, then we can start to use our therapist tools, whatever are your best tools, whether it's starting to do a little bit of parts work about wondering like what part of me holds these beliefs, where did I learn this, who taught
Mhm.
me this, whose
Mhm.
beliefs are these? Because
Mhm.
they're probably not even yours, right? So
Mhm.
much of what we carry about money is about either stories that we've actually inherited that were passed down to us, things that
Mhm.
our parents told us about money, or observations that we made about money that are totally inaccurate. But that children, are like excellent observers, terrible interpreters, is the one saying. And so like we might have seen things and taken in a story about money that's not at all what our parents or the people around us were trying to teach us or would want us to think, but this is what
Mhm.
we've internalized, right? So the beginning part is that being with, right? Because when we can start to be with and be curious about our stories, then we can start to notice when they pop up. Like, oh, there's that story coming up again. I'm trying to charge this cancellation fee, and I feel like if I want money, it makes me greedy. Oh, that's interesting. Like, there it is again. Is
Mhm.
that true? Right? Or being able to confront that story. But it's only by actually identifying what we're holding that we can start to shift and change and soften these stories. Right? If we don't know what
Mhm.
we're carrying, we're just basically being driven by these stories and emotional responses and traumas too, because it's also trauma. For some folks, we experience straight up trauma around money.
Yeah.
And those are things that also can be taken to therapy and sometimes need to go to therapy. Sometimes there are things that, no amount of journaling or yoga or meditation will unwind those for you.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
excellent material for therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. Just as you're, talking about this, I had a conversation a week or so ago with a therapist. Shocker, I know. But we were talking about, helping people understand their beliefs. And this therapist had a little saying. It was like, yeah, we have to be able to name it to change it or to tame it. Name it to tame it. That was it, right. And I was like, yeah, just as you're talking, I'm like, right. If we don't understand
Exactly.
our money story or our money beliefs, then how do we tame it or change it?
That's exactly it. Because sometimes
Yeah.
too, you'll identify a story and immediately be like, oh, I don't believe that anymore. Like even just the
Yeah.
word, I remember when I did this exercise years ago, I identified that, to me, wealth was, like people with flashy sports cars and excessive plastic surgery. And like I had this
Mhm.
narrative inside of me that I didn't believe at all, but was this kind of like leftover, almost like teenage analysis of the
Mhm.
world, where it's like
Mhm.
superficial, right? And
Right.
greedy. And as soon as I wrote that out, I could immediately think of examples I had to the contrary, people that I had encountered in my nonprofit career who were
Mhm.
incredible, charitable donors, who had set up foundations to support
Mhm.
causes. And like,
Mhm.
I could immediately think of evidence to the contrary, but it wasn't until I actually let myself be with that story that I was like, oh, that's not true. And I did, I could let it go, but I had to be with it first to like really process that I already had so much evidence to the contrary. But yes, name it to tame it is exactly it when it comes to that mindset side.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about the practical step side?
So the
Mhm.
practical side is another version of being with, but
Mm.
this is with being with your numbers, right?
Mm.
So often I meet therapists who are afraid to really even look at what's happening in their bank account. They don't know
Right.
how much they make a month. They don't know
Mhm.
what they're spending money on. There's just this like haziness. And sometimes it's this kind of ostrich head in the sand situation where it's like they don't want to look at it. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's that when folks look at it, it's overwhelming. Maybe they have, again, some negative story come up of like, I'm not good at math. I'm dumb. My grade two math teacher was right. And they,
Mhm.
get overwhelmed and walk away, do anything but that.
Right.
So that being curious about your numbers, just starting to notice, like, okay, like just poke around in your clinic management software, poke around in your Jane. How much did
Mhm.
you collect this month? How much
Mhm.
did you collect last month? Are those numbers the same? Are they different? If they're different, can you think about why they're different? Right? Like, how much are you actually paying yourself? How much is coming home?
Mhm.
How is that feeling for your household? Like, is it enough money? Just starting to notice the actual numbers and like, what are you spending on? Right? Because business finances for, service-based businesses like ours, like private practices, are actually fairly simple, right? Like there's no inventory or anything we have to worry about. It's just like
True.
you,
Mhm.
you provide a service, money comes in the door, you
Mhm.
spend some of that money running the business, paying your rent, paying for your software, paying for some trainings, and what is left, some of that has to go aside for taxes and the rest is for you. Right? Like
Mhm.
that's kind of it. So starting to
Mhm.
understand what are the basic numbers that you're working with, starting to notice are they working for you? Are they better than you imagine?
Mhm.
Because sometimes too, while we're busy ignoring our numbers, we're hitting numbers that would have blown our minds a year ago. But we're not noticing our wins and our successes either, right? And then starting to use that curiosity to notice, okay, if these numbers are not working, what are a couple small things I can do to change things? Is it
Mhm.
that I need one more client? Is it that I need to actually enforce my cancellation policies? Okay, now I've been trying to enforce my cancellation policies for the last month. How did that change my numbers? Right. So
Right.
there's that creating clarity about the actual numbers that, again, once you start to see those numbers, you can figure out if something needs to be changed and you can do something about it. But when we don't know our numbers, often too, our feelings about money have nothing to do with the numbers. We feel like everything's terrible. And actually, we've just had our best month ever. But we're not in touch with the actual financial results that we're getting. Um,
Mhm.
so again, that real being with and being curious and noticing what's happening there.
Right. So being with your emotions and your beliefs about money, but then also being with your actual money and looking at what's actually happening here.
Precisely.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's really deep and really good. Hmm. Lots to think about there. Can you maybe walk us through what you think some of the key ingredients are to building a healthy, sustainable relationship with money in
Mm,
private practice?
yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so the first piece, which we've touched on, in these first steps is curiosity,
Yeah.
right? It's coming to it with curiosity. Curiosity is so powerful. It unwinds, the
Mhm.
survival parts of our brain when we can start to ask like, "Huh, why is that? I wonder." So that being with. So I find that curious approach also gives you the energy to come back again and again, right?
Mhm.
So being
Mhm.
curious about our stories,
Mhm.
curious about our numbers, identifying what's going on. The next piece is connection, right? So starting to have connection around these numbers, right? So
Mhm.
being with others, talking with
Mhm.
people, getting help, because we have so much silence and isolation still around money.
Mhm.
Sometimes people talk more
Absolutely.
with the people around them, like their friends, about sex than they do about money, right? It's like money is like that much more taboo, and we have that much more like shame and fear around it. So
Mhm.
starting to talk with the people around you, starting to talk with your colleagues about like, yeah, what is your fee, and like, what is your cancellation fee, and like, do you charge it, and
Mhm.
like, what are you making in a month? Those can be really
Mhm.
scary conversations to have, right? And
Yep.
part of that is why in my course, Money Skills for Therapists, like part of what we're doing is making a container to have these conversations because they can feel scary at first. It can feel a little bit like exposing, right? But it's so
Right.
powerful when we start to
Mhm.
talk about money with other people and we can learn alongside them and learn
Mhm.
from them and
Mhm.
actually realize sometimes that we're doing better than we thought or learn little ways that we could be improving our situation.
Mhm.
So there's that curiosity, there's the connection, and then
Mhm.
there's actually like seeking out the learning to fill in your gaps, right? Like we weren't taught about these things.
Mhm.
I don't know how to ride a motorcycle. That's not
Mhm.
because I'm an idiot. It's because I've never learned how to ride a motorcycle, right? Like if I want to ride a motorcycle, I got to go take motorcycle classes, right? Or I got to read
Yep.
books or watch videos about
Yep.
motorcycles. And it's the same thing with finances and money, right? It's like this is an area where we were not educated, you
Mhm.
know, for whatever reasons, and we need to fill in that gap in our education,
Hmm.
right? So seeking out information, my podcast, Money Skills for Therapists, you can check out 160 episodes chatting about money from different perspectives, including a couple episodes with Liane,
Hmm.
or courses like mine. Like YouTube is full of resources. There's so much information out there. So starting to seek out the information to fill in those gaps that you have. And then the last thing about making money work is like a sticking with it. You need to stick with it, right? You need to be able to like come back to it. Once you're clear on your task, once you've filled in those financial gaps, you will see that you need to do things like track your numbers on a regular basis.
Yeah.
You need to pay yourself a regular paycheck. You need to keep track of your taxes and remit. Like there's certain things you need to do. And sometimes
Hmm.
we fall behind on these tasks, and that's
Yeah.
okay, right? But
Hmm.
it's the coming back to it. When we're
Hmm.
resilient and we can come back to it and be like, okay, I'm going back to it again. Oops, I missed my money time this week. That's okay. I'll work on it a little bit extra.
Yeah.
That keeps us in touch with it, and it takes something that could be this huge, mountainous, overwhelming task, which is what happens to finances when we don't touch it, is we're like, oh my God, I have a
Hmm.
year of receipts to go through for my taxes. Like I'm gonna barf. Um, it takes a task that can be like that and breaks it into small little bite-sized pieces. So every week, you're
Right.
doing a couple things, you're updating your sheet, you're double checking your numbers, maybe you're doing your profit first transfers if you want to do that kind of budgeting system, you're paying yourself, and then it's like done. And then next
Right.
week you'll have another 10 or 20 minutes of work to do, right?
Yes.
So it's the
Yeah.
coming back that takes
Mhm.
something and makes it sustainable over time. Because also having that information as you go allows you to make good financial decisions as you go, right? You can't make good
Absolutely.
financial decisions a year later to be like, oh, wow, I really overspent on my expenses. So there's so much benefit to just, again, being with your money in these regular, sustainable ways.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I know I made that change for myself, like, breaking it down.
Yes.
Um, I didn't actually do it on my finances first,
Yeah.
probably a little bit of a mistake, but I did it in my business planning where, I had these annual goals that were just amazing and I
Yeah.
wasn't reaching them. Now,
Yes.
this was before I was a therapist because I'm a serial entrepreneur, for those who don't know me. But I realized that, I could set these amazing goals and I had the ability to actually reach the goals.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I started to break those goals down into quarterly and monthly and then weekly, right? Once I set a weekly goal, right? I
Mm-hmm.
knew exactly what I need. I know exactly what I need to do this
Yes.
week. If I
Yes.
do this week, by
Yeah.
December 31st, I'll hit my annual goal.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so breaking it down that small for me really worked. And then I brought it into my finances because
Mm-hmm.
I was the person that like procrastinates and avoids at all costs.
Yeah.
And then you send the stuff to your bookkeeper or your accountant, and it's like, I don't know, February, March, whatever. And they're asking you what happened 12 months ago. And I'm like, dude, I can't tell you what I had for breakfast yesterday.
I know.
Like,
I know. It's
right? Like
so
it's
difficult.
gone. And so putting
Yeah.
myself on a system of looking at the finances every week and just making notes and making sure everything is documented so that when the bookkeeper or whoever has a question, I know what the answer is. Like it's just and even knowing what the numbers are, I
Yeah.
can't tell you how liberating it has
Yes.
been. Right?
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
liberating,
Yes.
literally, and transforming because
Yes.
all of a sudden I know if I'm on track for my annual goal or if I'm not on track. And how amazing is it to figure out that, oops, this week we're a little below where we need to
Yeah.
be. We need to try and, make that up in the next week or whatever. But even to be able to like look out in your schedule and go, you know what, it's okay because I can see that I've got this or that in
Yes.
my schedule coming up. Not a big deal. We're going
Absolutely.
to make it up, right? Or you have a great week and you're like, woohoo, I can actually take a vacation earlier than I thought I was going to be able to, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's so many things I think that come up with being with your numbers and
Totally. Yes.
doing it that
Yes.
way. Hmm.
And clarity is one of my favorite words right now. I'm on a
Mm,
personal clarity kick.
yes.
But clarity is a word that I try not to overuse in my marketing, but I could
Mhm.
use it in every single sentence because confidence and clarity. Like
Yeah.
if you go to my website, you listen to my podcast, you listen to me talk, because that not knowing too, I think really undermines our
Mhm.
confidence.
Yes.
Having that blurriness of like, I don't know what's happening, that really seeps into us and it eats a lot of bandwidth. Like I used to, kind of visualize it as like a dark cloud hanging over in the background, especially for folks if like you don't know if you're saving enough for taxes. right? You
Right.
don't know if you're going to have enough money to actually like take time off, and like will you be able to actually be present with your kids, or are you going to be thinking about the fact that you don't know if you're going to make your bills, right? Like for
Mhm.
some therapists it can get very dire, right?
Right.
And that
Yeah.
is a huge emotional drain. So having
Hmm.
the clarity to see what's happening now, be able to, as you say, take strategic action, know when you can relax, know when it's time to, try to book in a couple extra clients,
Hmm.
that clarity and being able to have that sustained effort also just takes away all that stress and ickiness and lets you have that energy for something else in your life, whether it's something in your business or whether it's like taking up pickleball, right? There's just so many better things you can do with that energy.
Well, even as you're saying this now, Lindsay, like I'm thinking about how I, as a therapist, would be showing up in client
Yes.
sessions
Yes.
if I'm terrified about, I don't know if I'm gonna have enough money to pay
Mm-hmm.
rent or mortgage, or I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm just thinking energetically as a therapist, the difference for me showing up going, oh my goodness, like I have no idea.
Yes.
No idea what's going on with my numbers. I don't know if I'm gonna have enough or, whatever, as opposed to even if it's not a great month and my numbers are off, still having that clarity of knowing, okay, this is where the numbers are. I know what I need to do. Energetically, I'm able to show up better for my clients,
Yes.
right? And here's the thing, I think, anyways, when you show up better for your clients, you're going to get more referrals.
For sure. And your clients are going to keep showing up for you. Like I've
Mhm.
also felt it too when I've been a client and I can feel that my practitioner
Yeah,
is overstretched, not
yeah.
respecting their own boundaries.
Hmm.
Like I feel that energetically as a client, and
Hmm.
our clients feel that too. Like they can see
Hmm.
and notice that you're like cramming them in at lunchtime, because you're not able to say no. Like they
Hmm.
know that you haven't had
Hmm.
lunch. They can feel that. And so it does show up in so many ways. And another way that I see it show up, Liane, that can be even more detrimental than the kind of stress is resentment, right? When
Yes.
we don't
Hmm.
know our numbers or we haven't
Hmm.
figured out how to make our numbers work
Hmm.
and our clients cancel,
Hmm.
right? Or
Hmm.
want to take a
Hmm.
break and
Yeah.
they're telling us about their great vacation that they're about to go take and you're worried about how much you could put down on your credit card this month, that
Right.
breeds resentment and that is terrible for the clinical relationship. Right. So
Absolutely.
we also need to be in right relationship with our clients to be able to give them the best possible therapy that we can. And if we
Mhm.
are jealous of them, angry at them, resentful of them on some level because of our own relationship with money, we are negatively impacting that relationship and the service that we're providing.
Wow. Is this a therapy session or are we talking about money?
It's a little bit of both.
Oh, but that's so powerful. And I think, what you're saying is so right. That resentment is just massive. Again, right? It's impacting the therapeutic relationship, therapeutic alliance. It's impacting how we show up as therapists.
Hmm.
So, I mean, that alone, forget your personal stuff. For your clients,
Oh,
get it
yeah.
figured out, right? So
Totally.
that,
Yes. From a
your
business
relation.
perspective, it's not good. It's not good for your business. So
No.
even if you're not ready yet to like acknowledge that you deserve to be well and pay your mortgage and also go on vacation and take care of your kids and their
Mhm.
needs, even if you're not there, just know
Mhm.
that it's not good for your clients when you're not taking care of
Yeah.
your money too.
Right. Oh my goodness. Wow. Lindsay, thank you so much for this amazing conversation. I know so many in our community are going to walk away from this episode feeling seen, supported, and hopefully a little more hopeful about their own financial future. So I just want to take a second to say thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
We're going to include links in the show notes below about how to connect with Lindsay and explore her programs and her resources. Lindsay, I am so grateful once again for your shared wisdom with us here today. And if this episode has resonated with you, if it gave you that deep breath of relief, or if it sparked a fresh, sense of possibility, I'd love for you to share it with another therapist who might need to hear this. So until next time, I encourage you to take care of yourself the way you so generously take care of others. Thank you. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Build Your Private Practice podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love it if you'd subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a fellow Canadian therapist who needs this. And remember, the work you do matters. Keep showing up, Keep holding space and keep building a practice that works for you. If you're looking for practical tools or support to grow your practice with more clarity and confidence, head to buildyourprivatepractice.ca. There's lots waiting for you there. I'll see you next time.